Hi everyone, I wanted to do a video to go through all the paperwork that we have discussed to date. I realize that there is a lot of paperwork to those of you who are new, and so I wanted to have a resource for you that you could come back to if needed and review, or maybe you just didn't hear something the first time, and this will help. Obviously, does not mean that you can't still ask questions to myself or Dee Dee or Jessica. Okay, so to start, this is the what we call the weekly clinical assignment checklist. This is what goes into the student's folder and stays there. You should have a hard copy of this, and they can access this on Blackboard as well. Okay, so it is broken down week by week, and you have it shown for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday clinical every week. So it's perfect for them to know what to bring to clinical, what we're going to discuss in post-conference. That's really more of a tool for you guys, but it's there for the students as well. And then what is due on their assigned due date. So Wednesdays are Friday by 10 a.m. and Thursday and Friday clinicals have paperwork due by Monday at 10 a.m. So as you can see here for hospital orientation, which is scheduled for next week, if you had to have anything, if you had to have them bring anything, that would have been here. That's why it says per instructor. We do not have a post-conference that day. And their final paperwork is the course point VSIM, which we have discussed with them this week. There is nothing as instructors that you have to do for that. So they are submitting it online, and Dee Dee is tracking that. So here you see that the week after hospital orientation, this is called the clinical day 1. We also refer to it as a shadow day. There will be another email coming next Friday that talks about the shadow week. So don't worry too much about that yet. You will see that students do not need to pick up a patient assignment this day, so we are not assigning patients to students this week. Okay, it tells them what they need to bring. It talks about what we're going to talk in post-conference about, as well as what is due that week. And I'll talk about this stuff next week. Okay, so that's how this works. That's how this form works. Sorry, let me scroll down a little bit. It gives us our breaks and everything. And also just know if a student ever tells you that they did not know what time paperwork is due, it is printed on this, and I have brought attention to it as well this week when we met. Okay, so let me pull this down. Next, let's go to the clinical evaluation tool. This is the tool that we use to give feedback to our students. This typically stays in their folder as well. We are giving them feedback this week in the first 3 weeks of campus clinical. That's what B1, B2, and B3 means. So we're just really giving them feedback in these 3 critical behavior areas. So on time and prepared, everyone was like that these 3 weeks. Maintains Belmont and facility dress code. If you had to have a discussion with people about jewelry, undergarments, shoes, etc., you could put a needs improvement here. Okay, if you look at the bottom of this, at the bottom of the first page, it does have a key. We have satisfactory, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory, and that's how we're giving feedback. So because it was the first couple of weeks and they are learning, we are giving them the benefit of the doubt and giving them needs improvement if they did not meet these the dress code in week 2 or week 3, as well as orientation week. Okay, if you told them to dress in a certain way and they don't, then you can give them a needs improvement there as well. For the remainder of the semester, this week 1 is shadow week, and then 2 and so on through 8. These are all in the hospital, 1 through 8. If they have any dress code violations from there, that needs to be a U. They've had ample instruction about this. Okay, even if they had not had a dress code violation in the past, it will be a U anytime that they do it in the hospital. And just for review, the S is simulation. On that weekly, this assignment sheet, you will see that the very last week here of when our clinicals meet, we are back on campus for simulation, and that's what the S actually means. And the F at the end is really just a average of each row. If they receive a U in any part of this final, that is grounds for failing the clinical course. If they receive 2 U's in any one day, that could be grounds for a clinical failure. And we say could be grounds because it's really going to depend on what it was. If they did not fill out 2 parts of their paperwork, I do not believe that should be a clinical failure. However, if they had 2 critical indicators in one day, that definitely could be grounds for failure. Please know that anytime you give anyone an NI or a U in these critical behavior areas, I'd like for you to send me a quick email and let me know who and what, just so that we can keep track of it. We want to make sure that there's not patterns going on as well, okay? If a student is late to clinical 2 days, okay, that's 2 U's, and obviously that's grounds for clinical failure. It says that on the guideline sheet. And obviously anytime, even if they haven't received any U's, if there's ever a truly unsafe behavior or a HIPAA violation has been done, we need to know that as well, because that also could be grounds for failure. Anytime that you write NI or U anywhere on their form, whether it be a critical behavior or whether it's just from paperwork and feedback, please give them feedback here. An example of that would be I'd give the date of the clinical day. I would put NI, I would write NI right here, and I would say the area that they got that needs improvement on. Okay, you can add to it if you want to. I typically have a conversation with the student during clinical that next week, whether it be paperwork they needed improvement on, and then we talked about, you know, how they could improve and whatever. I will write what we talked about there. A U, obviously I'm going to write U and the area that they got that U for. If it's a critical behavior, you definitely need to chart, you know, that you had a conference with that student and the plan for it not to happen again. And also if it's on paperwork, I do the same thing, just what area it is. And then after I talk with the student, I say, you know, that it might just say that the area of pathophysiology was not filled out on the preclinical paperwork. Student states that he or she will not make this mistake again. Okay, so this is just really a documentation of any issues that you're having in clinical. Okay, if you ever have a question about what to do with someone, always feel free to give us a call. Okay, so that's the clinical evaluation sheet. When the students, we have talked about health history. We went over this as a group one day. Know that the students have practiced one. They've turned that into you, and you can be giving feedback. You can even use those guidelines. They have the guidelines available to them on Blackboard as well. But starting in the hospital, starting that shadow week, they need, and it says on here, completes health history 3 completed at satisfactory required. So sometime during this time from shadow week to the last day of clinical in the hospital, they need to have 3 satisfactory ones. Okay, I encourage the students to get those done early, so it's one less thing they have to worry about toward the end of the semester. If you have any questions about the health history, this is really just getting them in there to talk to patients. You know, they're doing this cold spa or old carts, however you've learned it or what they say, it's the same thing. They're doing that, they've done that in health assessment. They're not doing that every day on their patient, because that is more of a presentation, not necessarily an ongoing care. So they do have some questions about that, you know, and once we get to the health assessment, they might do the same thing here. And we want to help them understand that chief complaint and history of present illness on a presentation is different than if we were writing it on this health history form. Sorry, let me find it. The assessment form. Okay, so the clinical assessment form is what the students are bringing with them when they pick up their patient assignment. I went over this with them this week, but they should be filling this page out before they come to clinical. This is what they're going to give you report on. Okay, so this should be filled out. Please know that the first couple of weeks, some things might not be filled out because they just don't know really what to put there. So help them in the first couple of weeks to, you know, to know what to put there. You say this is history of present illness here. They have a hard time finding that in the chart or knowing what to say. A lot of times they'll copy it word for word off of a history and physical that a surgeon put in there. And, you know, that history and physical was the patient presenting to the clinic, let's say prior to a knee replacement. So that's not really the same thing here. So just help them to understand this. This needs to be pertinent past medical history, not every single thing that's happened in their life, abnormal assessment findings, and then help them to decide what type of focused assessment they're going to have on their patient. These vital signs down here, right here, are filled out during clinical. Okay, because even though they're giving you a report in pre-conference from this, they're going to continue to fill this in because they're not going to know IV and fluids and things like that. But at the end of the shift, they're going to give a report to their nurse or that's caring for that patient. So they can, what they've added to here, they can give her report or him report. Where it says orders to be carried out, I recommend that they write down their orders, and then as they do them, mark through them so that when they go to give report to the patient's nurse as they're leaving, they can say what they've done as well as what still needs to be done. This second page should also be filled out. Let me back up. The meds right here until clinical week 3, I believe. I might be wrong about that. They're not going to have to do this. They are learning about meds in lab right now. They don't even know how to read it in MAR, so they're not expected to be able to know this. The second page, pathophysiology, this needs to be completed prior to coming to clinical. Please know that like some of our floors might have the same medical diagnosis pretty often, so I don't make them do the same medical diagnosis every week. If they've already done a certain medical diagnosis, I have them come back up here under past medical history, and let's say there's COPD or BPH or something, I'll have them do the pathophysiology on that. And please remember, they need to have a reference here. These labs are here for them to start looking at and understanding. Of course, not every patient's going to have these labs. Some patients don't have any at all. So helping them understand that they don't have to fill out every single thing. If they don't have something, just have them mark through it, okay? But we want them to have the lab result here, the date that it was drawn, the normal range. And then the rationale is, why did we draw that? Because, we don't just draw all labs on everybody. And then if it is high or if it is low, why they feel like it is high or low. This is a great tool to help start a conversation with the student, because they really don't know a lot of this yet, and they'll say that potassium and sodium were high or low because of diet. And so it really can help them start understanding disease process. This medication sheet too doesn't have to be filled out until I believe the clinical week 3 once we're in the hospital, but again, I'll check that date and give you more feedback in the week or so to come. But all that we want them to write here is medications that they would give while in clinical. Sorry, I don't know why that just popped up. So they have to look at time frame. It needs to be between 6:30 in the morning and 12:30 in the afternoon. They can be PO, IM, sub-Q meds, as well as topical medications and inhalations, as well as anything per rectum. And this is going to help them with med sheets and stuff as well, okay? The second page is an organizational sheet. This side needs to be done prior to coming to clinical. This is their plan. It won't be very in-depth, just their plan throughout the day. And then as I explained to them this week, this should be done during clinical, and it's going to be exactly what they did and what they found and how they intervened and things like that. Please know, I sent you an example of one of these. And of course, it's not going to look like in the beginning. That was a student toward the end of the semester, but just help them throughout the day to fill this out so they can kind of see what they can be writing here. And the assessment gets filled out during the day after they've done their assessment on their patient and turned in. Okay, that's the clinical assessment form. And again, you also had a example sent to you. And then so you are understanding this is the care plan. This is what the other videos are going to entail in explaining the different steps. So when I come to you again, it will have this concept map pulled up, and I will give you examples and run through what we'll be teaching that week. So I hope this helped. I hope it cleared up any questions you had. If not, please let me know if I can do anything else or have any further explanation. Have a great day, guys.